Manasvi, we are live now. You can please start the session.
Thank you so much. Hello, namaste, and good afternoon. This is Manashvi, and on behalf of ForOptom, I welcome you all to ForOptom e-learning session. This is a theme-based e-learning session, and the theme of this week is research methodology. This session is live on YouTube, and if you have any queries, you can type them out in the conversation box, and we will be discussing them after the presentation. Today, we have with us Dr. Animesh Jain, who will be speaking on the topic publishing your first research article. A brief introduction to our speaker here. Dr. Jain is a professor in the Department of Community Medicine at Kasturba Medical College, KMC, Mangalore, where previously he served as HOD for 5 successful years. He is also the head of the Mangalore Unit of the UNESCO Chair in Bioethics and a member of Southeast Asia Regional Association of Medical Education. So, on behalf of our Optum team, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Manashvi. That's good to have a short introduction because I insist on that. So let's get down to business, and we will start with very basic things about publishing the first research article. So namaste to all the people who are attending this particular session. The outline is very simple. I've kept it like this. Why publish? First of all, like we should know why should we publish? What is so important about publishing? And then once we have this idea, then what to publish? And once we are convinced that we should publish and what we should publish, we should know where to publish it, because we can't just go and publish anywhere and get our efforts wasted. We can't even do it in the lay press all the time, though lay press is important. But when I'm talking about scientific publication, I'm talking about something in a journal which is credible. Then I will just give you some basic ideas about how to write to publish. And that will be more about writing your first manuscript, some tips and insights, which I have actually cured from different places and also from my experience. So I hope I'm audible. Please let me know in case there is a difficulty or technical difficulty or challenge. So I request, Manasvi and Sakar to do that and let me know.
Yes,
So
sir.
first of all, yeah, why should we write? Why in the first place should we write? So basically, writing gives us fame. It gives us recognition by your peers, by different people in your fraternity and others. Sometimes there might be regulatory requirement in some cases where it's promotion, or sometimes even requirements of you know the various regulatory bodies which mandate that a particular person or a faculty or a consultant should have a particular publication or number of publication. Some people, the motivation is incentive. The incentive could be different. It could be monetary, it could be non-monetary, but that incentive itself could be motivation. At the same time, some people want to apply for research funds, grants, and this publication actually helps us. How? Because once I publish, automatically my visibility in that field increases, my credibility increases. And people who are actually approving grants or research funding, they look at all these things and then they realize that yes, this person has credibility, has done some work, has published it. So let's put our money on this person and maybe we will grant him or her. At the same time, if we are getting some grants or sometimes even otherwise, if we find something new, it's our responsibility. As a responsible citizen, it's my responsibility to the society. And if I've taken funds from the government, then it's obviously taxpayers fund which has come to me. So it's my duty to contribute to the progress of science and contribute to the progress of human beings. Just give you some of course it's not from your field, but I'll just give you an idea. Now we have this particular disease, especially in this part of Karnataka, which is known as Kaisanur forest disease. It started in an area nearby from where I am, in some of the forest areas and Kaisanur forest and Shimoga district and all that. So basically there we saw that this kind of thing was there, and how it was noticed was that there were a lot of monkeys who were falling dead. And then they realized that soon some of the people tribals and nearby villagers and all also starting getting a particular illness or sickness, and then some of them were also passing away. So this was realized, and this was confined mainly to our Karnataka region, in again one part in the Karnataka region, in Karnataka state of India. Now this disease was known, reported, and it's been there, and in fact we have now a lot of papers on that. But this you see on your screen is Kaisanur forest disease, first reported case in Kerala. Now Kerala is a neighboring state of Karnataka. We know that in Karnataka it's been there, but when a paper like this comes, you also realize that there is something which is happening there, and they have reported this. Now people who read this will get an idea about that, then also get an idea how it presents and what. So if you see there was no cranial nerve involvement, and weakness or limbs or cerebellar signs and all that, so you also get to see what could be the presentation or a different presentation in Kerala. So that's again important. Now this is a case report again. This is from one of our sister institutes in Manipal. So this talks about Kaisanur forest disease, but if you look at it, it talks about the manifestation from the angle of the speech and hearing point of view, and this is from Department of Speech and Hearing. So they have talked about it, and they have also talked about that how this case of 5-year-old child actually had diffuse encephalopathy. But again, uh, if you read through the paper, they talk about what did they do and how, like they went through the whole thing. So they talk about the neurological symptoms begin to appear only in the second phase of the viral attack. So again, this gives a very different picture, and if somebody had to read and do a lot of this literature review, or if I want to tomorrow identify better if I come across a case, or if I want to institute treatment measures and management protocols, I have all this evidence from different places, and then I can put up a better practice. So this kind of thing helps us. Now again, if I want to institute some measures or some preventive measures, or maybe I want to come out with some programs or policies, I need to know what are the practices of people. So if you look at this paper, one of our papers, Inter-District Variation in Child Health Promotion Practices, and we compared between Northern Karnataka, we went to Ballari, of course, a couple of times, and we stationed we hired some manpower, and we hired and stationed them there to do some surveys house to house. So if you look at this, 2,203 households in Dakshin Kannada where we are based, and 2,158 households in Ballari district were surveyed. And this practice, the differences were brought up. So again, this gives us an insight about people's behavior, people's healthcare practices and promotion practices, and how that can affect health and health-seeking behavior. So this is again important. So this gives us an idea. Now this is another thing. Mangalore has a lot of malaria, which has started probably in late 90s, I mean early 90s, mid 90s, because of the construction boom where people started coming, migration and all that. And then they brought in malaria with them and it spread. Now, it's been a lot of efforts to actually control it. But we came out with another solution, that it was something known as GIS tag tablets, tab, and this technology was used to look at, make the whole system more robust, and the reporting, and then making it faster, and also to give these tabs to the health workers, multi-purpose workers, who will go house to house and then go do the survey, upload the image then there, geotagged, and then we see that this is like leading to closure of the breeding sites. And so this is again reported. Now if this is reported, one, it creates evidence. The other thing is, anybody wants to replicate that, they get an idea. So all this is like possible only if you not just do work. When you do good work, you also share, you tell the people that this is there. It also gives you an opportunity to get some critical inputs. First, when you're in the publication process, reviewers will give you inputs, and also once it's get published, then people who read it, they can write their opinions, they can write letters to editors, they can write their own experiences, criticisms, whatever, or clarifications they can seek. So that advances science. And this I've already talked about, sorry. So this is what is the importance, and I hope that now you know that this is important to publish. Now, what are the different types of articles? Of course, original article is based on your original research. That means you've done a research and then from that you're coming up with a paper. Case report, as I just showed you, usually a single case, sometimes two cases, but and then you can have a series of cases. So that's also there. Review is basically a detailed analysis of recent research on a specific topic. So I could probably even write a review on the management of COVID-19. So I synthesize all the evidence that is there till now, and I come up with these are the different protocols. That will be my review article. Or I could do it on say Kaisanu Forest, whatever. Commentary is short article with author's personal opinions. You can have short article which is very similar to an original research paper, or brief papers which are in short, which will have less space, less number of words, less number of figures and tables. You can have technical notes that describes a specific technique or a procedure. And then there are sometimes in certain specialities like yours, you can have pictorial essays, which basically is more of images, little bit of write up and some explanations, and it's a teaching article with lots of images. So when you put it pictorially, it's much easier for people to understand and grasp it. Editorial is usually by the editor or invited by editor, written by somebody who's a person who's well experienced in the field or one of the experts. So it's often a short review or critique of original articles sometimes, or sometimes their own perspectives. Letters to editor include short and on subject of the interest to readers. As I said, we have published and somebody wants to actually send their opinion or they want to ask something, they could do that. So this is overall what are the different types. So this is just to give you an idea that what are the different types of papers. Now, where do you publish? Now, if you see this maze, basically it tells you that you may be confused when you start, and then there are so many ways to go. So if you want to reach somewhere, you need to choose the correct path, right? So basically you need not get confused by seeing so many different kinds of meandering and wandering and different roads. So what I suggest is you should start and think of maybe not more than three, maybe two or three. So what you should do is you have a plan A and plan B at least. So you select a journal and you keep another journal as a backup. Ideally it would be good if you can have a third one also, but at least keep two. Okay, so if you send to one and if it comes back, you know where immediately to send to the next one. So keep that shortlisted. I usually tell my students to keep a list of a couple of them and prioritize. So once you shortlist five or something, you prioritize and then you say that okay, why this first, why if not that, why next one this. So you will have certain points to think of and then decide on a priority list. Now how do you go about publishing? So first you need to decide which audience is right for me. Now if I want to publish a paper on malaria and that tab experience, I need to reach out to an audience which will be interested in that. Now if I go and publish probably in a journal of anatomy, first of all it will be difficult and it will not be, but that audience is not interested in my malaria and tab, so I cannot go and approach them. Similarly, I go for a very specialized kind of a journal which publishes something on molecular aspects. Probably they may not, though I have malaria publication with molecular aspects, but this may not be the journal for this particular kind of a paper. So you need to understand where you need to target. And how do you do that? First thing, make it a habit that you start reading. So first, where are you reading your papers that is related to something which you are interested in or something you're working on? Think of that. So which journals publish the type of article that I want to write? If I am already clear on what I'm going to write, I need to look at the journals which publish the type of papers that I am writing. And then think of among those journals, which are the journals that you like the most and why. Think of that. So once you've done that, then you also look at the references that you probably have referred to or read. Where have they been published? Once you've done that, then talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers, find out where do they publish and what do they suggest. And having said that, then you go for a target journal. So you evaluate your target journal. Look at the prestige. What is the position of the journal in the community that you are thinking of, or maybe your own sphere. So look at the prestige of the journal. What is the speed? How quickly they will process, and how will you know? And please, with a caution, speed doesn't mean 2 days, 1 week they should publish. Then there is something wrong. It should be reasonable speed. That means anything between 2 to 6 months would be fairly good enough. 2 months usually it takes for a good review. So 2 3 months, then further followed by maybe a revision and then resubmission or whatever, and then so that could be an ideal this thing. It can sometimes go more, but in today's age, digital age, I think it would be reasonably good to say 2 to 3 months will be the review, and that maybe the review and decision process. And then once that comes in, so after that you will proceed further, and depending on the acceptance or not, it will go online or maybe published online first or ahead of print, something like that. Then what is the audience you're targeting? Then what is the aesthetics of the journal, and what is the author service which they provide, and what is the experience people have come up with? Is there a cost involved, and if so, how much? Is it affordable? So look at all these factors, because that's very important. If it's not affordable to me, however good it may be, however fast it may be, and however prestigious the journal will be, I probably may not be able to afford to publish there. And then also look at likelihood of acceptance, especially when it's going to be your first. Look at this importantly, because you would try to maximize your chances. But having said that, don't get disheartened if you don't publish right first time, because you might have to try second, third time or something, and then you get published. So that has also happened. Now it's easier, but please remember that you need to look at these things. Then once you've done that, select your journal carefully, read the aims and scope of the journal, think of the target audience, and very importantly, follow the guidelines. Please read through the instructions to the author very carefully and make it a point to adhere to everything. Many a times, one of the prime reason for the article to be returned or rejected is that you have not adhered to the guidelines. So it's very important for us to adhere to the guidelines. Articles should not be submitted to more than one journal at a time. So it has to be only one journal. It cannot be that I'll submit to two, three, and then we'll see. No, it's unethical, it's wrong, and you cannot do that. And many times editors actually communicate within themselves. Now, please remember, when you are selecting journals, there is something known as predatory journal. What is predator? Predator actually hunts on the prey. So who's the prey here? We, the gullible people who are interested in publishing. So we have to avoid these predatory journal. And how do they predate on us? By looking at our interest to publish, and they actually capitalize on this by looting us of our money, and also by robbing us of a good chance of our scientific paper to be reaching many people in a nice way, and to the scientific community that we want to target. So it's usually like the predatory journals, they said, have some characteristics. They are of poor quality, the credibility of research is in doubt, and the aim of these journals is to make money. So we should not fall prey to these journals. Now, how do you identify them? Basically, we identify them by looking at the the contact and the publisher. Is the publisher well regarded? Are the people who are there given proper contact details? Because many a times it will not be there. So you will identify them. Then, is it clear about what is the peer review process? Is it clearly identified? How long will it take? What is the proposed process? How many reviewers? What next? Then, are they indexed in the services that you use? Many a times we use PubMed or certain services like Scopus, and so is it indexed there? And does it spell out what is the fee charged? And is it reasonable or is it exorbitant? So you need to look at that as well. So if you can see all these things, and then next you go for editorial board. But please be careful that sometimes you might find people's name on the editorial board, and in case you happen to, you check their profiles also, because many a times they are not aware. That also happens nowadays. So you need to look at that. And then, is it following some of the good initiatives like Committee on Publication Ethics, Directory of Open Access Journals, or say suppose like Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association and ICMJ. So these are some of the things. So basically, please recognize them by those characteristics. Also remember, all of us, including you and me, probably are getting mails, publish 2 days, within a week, or fast publication. Those mails are unsolicited. That means you have not asked for them and they are just sending. Many a times they will have names which are very similar to very established name. British Journal of Optometry and Vision Sciences. I'm just hoping that there is nothing like that actually. So they will create names like that. And actually it will be based in somewhere like developing countries, maybe in our country or neighboring country or something. It might be running, one room will be running some 5 journals. So they will not have proper addresses and all. There will be even promises of fast publication and hardly any peer review. If you look at those journal articles, actually they will be of very poor quality, not having structure, not having some kind of the formatting and all that. They will not be indexed in a proper indexing systems. They usually charge exorbitant fees, and they'll give you an option of, if you pay us more money, we will publish it even faster. So those are the flags which you should realize. Probably you are in a wrong place. You should not go for such places. Now, what is the peer review process? So the peer review process is, the author submits manuscript, the editor looks at, sometimes it will be the associate or the assistant editor, they will screen. If they find that it's not fitting the scope, it's not well written, it's not following guidelines, sometimes they'll send for technical review, or sometimes straight away reject it, because they have a huge volume load which they have to publish. If they find that it's okay, they'll go ahead, they'll send it for peer review. Then once that is done, the journal or the editorial board will decide whether to publish or not. So once the peer review comments come to the editor, based on the review comments, they will decide, they will consider each of the comments, and then they will decide. Once that is done, if it is to be revised, they will inform the author to revise in the light of the comments. If it's to be revised, then the author has to do it within certain time frame, send it back. If not, it will be decided whether to reject or accept. Accept means obviously the author is informed, then the galley proofs are sent, proofs to be corrected usually within 48 hours or so, and then submitted back. Now, before we go into writing and things like that, just a journal editor's point of view, why they reject articles. So it fails the technical screening. There are 8 reasons from one of the papers. There are different papers which have given, BMJ has, and so I've used one of them. The English was not sufficient for the pre-review process. Figures are not complete or not clear enough, or does not conform to the guide for authors, as I told you, or references are incomplete or very old. Next, doesn't fall within the aim scope. Then the article was incomplete. The procedure or the analysis of data was defective. The conclusion cannot be justified on the basis of the rest of the paper. And it is simply a small extension of a different paper. So you published something, and what you did, just added something more and made this paper. So that's not again acceptable. It's not comprehensible. You cannot make sense out of that paper. So that's also one of the reasons for rejection. The other thing is, then uh, the paper was boring. So these are some of the reasons why the papers get rejected. Now, once you are aware of this, let's look at what are the different parts. So you have the title, the abstract, the keyword. Then you also have the introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, figures and tables included in that. Now, if you look at it, I have said it in a different way, but I have organized it in a different way in the slide. So basically, if you look at it, title, abstracts, and keywords, then conclusion, introduction, I have organized that way. But please understand, it goes in a different way. Figures and tables are very important. Then comes your results, methods, and discussion. and then last year comes conclusion, little bit of introduction, and last is title, abstract, and keywords. Now let's look at some of these things. So when do you use a table and when do you use figures? So basically you use a table to show many and precise numerical values and other specific data. Okay, so that kind of a thing, if you have in a small space, if you want to show, you will use a table. But if you want to show a trend, you want to show some pattern, you want to show some relationship between the data set, then you will use a figure. But if you don't have much complicated thing to present, or you have too much of data which is already occupied by other figures and tables, for example, you want to say that we had 230 participants, of which so many were males, so many were females, and the age group varied between. Now this you may not require to put it on a table or a pie chart or something, but at the same time what you can do is you can always put up a text in the results section. So that can be done, and the other valuable data can be presented as a figure or a table. Again, if you want to show side by side comparison, sometimes it's easier to do it on a table because you have data side by side. So use that again. But if you want to summarize the result, then you can use a figure. So you can use a graph, pie chart, map. It's a very good thing. In fact, uh, you can do that much better when you put it as a figure because people can understand that. But if you are thinking that when putting your data into a table would mean creating a table with two or fewer columns, and you want to put something else more important there, then use a text. So you have to remember and balance it out. Similarly, if you want to show the presence or absence of specific characteristic, you can use a table. But if you want a visual explanation which gives a impression the moment it is seen, then, or if you want to show a procedure or you want to do a flow diagram, that you can do it by using a figure. And if you think the data is not very important, it's not relevant, it may be just a side thing for the paper, then what you can do is you can use a text and reserve your figures and tables for more important things. Now, just a broad outline about the structure. So this is known as IMRAD: introduction, materials and methods, results, and discussion. So that's IMRAD format: I, M, R, and D. So that's the IMRAD format for a journal article, original research article. So basically, introduction, you introduce relevant literature. And more importantly, you need to explain why this study is important, why this important study is different or new, and what was the hypothesis. So that's what you need to, what was the aim that you started with. Then materials and methods should be very good and very well written. That should tell the people what exactly was done. And most of the time I say that once you've done your study and to start off writing, this is one of the easiest and the most important section to start off. So don't worry too much about writing introduction and all first. I tell my students, write materials and methods first, because this is something which you know, you've done, you don't have to worry about, you know it best. So you write that first, and then you come back to results. So results, again, whatever you found, you need to describe and display there, and then explain. Similarly, your discussion will interpret your results, give meaning for that, you compare with others, and then you say that how that could be, like implications of that, how that could be important. So implication, and then finally you end with conclusion. So that's the whole structure. Now a few things I did not touch on, and I'll tell you. Once you've written the whole article, then write the abstract. Many a time people think that you write the abstract first. No, you write abstract in the end. Why? Because abstract is nothing but a summary, just a small part of the whole thing. I mean, in small, this thing, concise way, you're explaining the whole paper. So abstract is nothing but a summary. So it's key for the editor and also for many of the readers, because when they land up after searching your article, they first read the abstract. After reading the title, they read the abstract, and then it's important. So please do that. Write it carefully. Double check that the numbers in the abstract match that you are presented in text, tables, and results. Because many a times you write something and then you realize that there's a mismatch. That shouldn't happen. And conform strictly to the style indicated in the guide for authors. Okay. Now all that is done. You've written all that. You wrote the introduction. You wrote. Now what do? You submit. So how do you submit? Usually you require a covering letter. Now you might think, what is there? Covering letter is just like another letter. Please remember, covering letter is very important because you need to spell out a few things. You need to put why this topic is important, why these results are significant, what is the key result, why are you submitting to this journal, and why will this journal's reader want to read it. So keep it as direct as possible. And please remember, this can sometimes make or break your chances for actually publishing. So it's your opportunity to actually interact with the journal article or journal editor, and that's what is something which you need to do. It should be concise, it should be personal, it should be honest, it should be polite and professional. It should give your main objectives, why this has been done, why you want to publish it here, and what's so important about your work. Please do not copy paste from the abstract. Having said that, let me go over again and also tell you a few things here. So when you put up your results, keep it simple and keep it distilled. You may have too many results, but distill out important ones and depict them. In the results, just mention facts. Do not start explaining. In discussion, you will explain. Many a times people start mixing it up. If you have a result and discussion together, that's a different story. Otherwise, if you have a result section, please like describing will not be part of that. Introduction, build up the introduction once you have thought of the results, and then based on the results, maybe also on discussion, you bring your introduction. You will have some help because you've already proposed the result and protocol was written, so from there. But once your results are there, it's much easier because you can bring your introduction in line with what you have found. So that's important. So this is what I've told you. A few tips before I finally open it for if at all some discussion or queries there. So editors and reviewers are looking for original and innovative research. So you need to give them that, because every now and then people are submitting. So you need to give them something which is valuable. For research-based papers, ensure that you have enough numbers to justify the statistical conclusion. Don't just say that this sample size was too less, or you could say, you can't just say that more research is required. If that was the case, why did you actually go ahead? So please, even if you're saying that more research is required, give a justification. Say why, what happened, why do you say that, what kind of research, in specific some guidelines, so that somebody can take it forward. For a larger study, it may be better to produce one important research paper than actually chopping it out. Because many people think that, you might, if it's really worth it, then you do. Otherwise, it's not ethical also. It's called salami slicing. What you should do is, first, if you want to write better, you need to understand it starts with reading. So read, read, read. There's no substitute for that. You need to read, you need to understand, you need to learn the style. You just go through that and then pick up from the point of view of how exactly you're going to write, and pick up those things. Make notes if you want to build capacity and gain knowledge. How? By doing some online courses, and there's no dearth of it nowadays. Many of them are free. Attend workshops, attend webinars like this, and then once you've done with that, practice writing. It may not come the first time. Let me tell you, when I started publishing, I always used to be told during post graduation, but I never knew and how to go about doing. Nobody explained to me, nobody taught me that. But when I became faculty, about 2.5 years later, I had my first publication, which was very simple. And then another one that took me six rejections and almost a period of another 2.5 years. But I learned, and every rejection taught me. So don't get disheartened. Of course, I'm not saying that you will have the same experience, but then sometimes that is also valuable. And of course, now you have much more journals to publish. Another thing is, my strength may be to do things, or my strength to be maybe to do research or gather data or collect data, but I may not be good at writing. Collaborate, network with people who do different things. And some people might be good at putting things together, putting it in perspective. So do that, collaborate and network, and persevere. You need to be very perseverant. You just can't give up. So once you do that, and it has its own rewards, because the moment you talk with evidence, people will understand, and your evidence will be a evidence based to build future practice. So few characteristics: the scientific writing is always clear, it doesn't have unnecessary details, it will be very to the point and specific. It has to have direct language. It should be simple. It should avoid vague or complicated sentences. Keep it simple. There's no need of flowery language. There's no need of writing very, beautiful English. It's just simple, plain. Again, let's not make assumptions. Many times we will say, you know, everyone knows that, or we will say, we believe so. And then, no, please keep it impartial and present data and facts and give evidence for what you say. At the same time, logically structured. It should be falling in a flow. So that's very important. Of course, it comes with practice, but please read. That's why read, and read good journals, because if you read some substandard ones, you will not really appreciate and you learn wrong things. And make it a point to be accurate. No ambiguous, no vague things, or no languages like approximately, about. Try avoiding these, because in science there's nothing like having some ambiguity or some kind of doubt. And it should be very objective. That means anything that you say has to be supported by evidence. It needs to be given with evidence. So remember, scientific communication demands precision. And how do we demonstrate that? By writing it clearly, by writing it with evidence, supporting our statements. So you need to demonstrate that. Also be very careful of your numbers, calculations and all. Because the moment you are not, that means the journal editor or reviewer gets a doubt that if they have not been careful about this, would they have done the research meticulously? Would they have been careful to do things in a proper way? And that's where again that could come in a negative impact, with a negative impact on the paper and its outcome. And then you need to have clarity and economy. What do I mean by economy? You write a thesis or a dissertation or a project report, maybe 20, 30, 50 pages, but here you have only 4, 5, maybe 3 pages available. You need to keep it concise, and that's why you need to filter out things. And I started with rejection, but let me also tell you why they get accepted also. So another perspective, why the articles get accepted. So it provides insight into an important issue. It's useful for people who can make decisions based on this. It's also used to develop a framework or theory, maybe advancing into a theory which is existing to a next level. It also stimulates new important questions which may be answered or asked. It also helps us to explore the issues that are appropriate. The methods used are applied rigorously and explain why and how the data support the conclusion. As I said, when you conclude, it is based on your results. It's not that somebody else's or whatever. Finally, your research has to conclude based on the findings that you've got. The connection to prior work in the field or from other fields are made and serve to make the article's argument very clear. So there's no ambiguity, there's no doubt, it's crystal clear. The article tells a good story. As I said, there's a good flow. So it has to fall in place. So good flow. Okay, well written, easy to understand, and logical arguments, and then there's no contradiction within themselves. Then if you want to look at some resources, please visit this website, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. It gives you the guidelines about authorship, it gives you different guidelines, and so it's a good site to look at. I would also say that and strongly recommend that please register for this particular thing called as ORCID or ORCID. So ORCID is basically an ID for yourself, which gives you that it's unique to you. So when I say and my name could be similar to somebody else's, but then I have this ID, and many of the journals now insist that if you don't have ORCID ID, they do not let you publish. Of course, some of them make it optional, but there are some journals, like I'll give you Turkish Journal of Ophthalmology, will not let you even go ahead with the submission process if all the authors do not have ORCID ID. Okay. And of course, try and have a profile on Google Scholar. it's easy. I wouldn't talk about Scopus to this audience right now because you're still beginning and you're still in the early phases. Again, easy to create a Researchgate profile. That there you can interact with people, you can even look for references, you can look for articles which are authored by people and message them, and then even interact and request them to send you articles, or you can even have forums where you can discuss things, some resources, and also have your profile where you have all the publications or your projects or research that you're working on clubbed together. So it's also visibility in a way. So I think with that, I would stop here. I have tried to keep it very simple and basic, tried to give you some motivation about why should you publish, what could happen if you publish, how do you go about and how do you approach it, what are the journals to look for and what are the characteristics in that, what are the journals to be avoided, and then I've also given you some insight into the structure as well as also a few tips on writing scientifically. So that's the overview of the whole process that I thought I'll keep it very simple in about 45-50 minutes, so that it becomes simpler for you and you just get the hang of the process, because writing an article itself is a workshop in its own. So with that, I stop here. uh, Over to Sakar and Manasvi, if there is anything or if any questions, or I don't know how do you go about this, so please let me know.
That was a wonderful presentation, Dr. Jain, and I'm sure that our audiences have also immensely enjoyed it. So we have received a few questions from our audiences. So starting with the first question, Miss Uma Maheshwari asks, while we send our papers for publishing, should we be sending the full paper or just the article?
Okay, so when you are sending for publication, as I understand, it's about journal publication, so you will have to submit the entire paper. So there is usually a process where you actually go into the journal website and look at what are the requirements for that. So usually all the good journals will have instructions to authors. Okay, so you need to look at those instructions to authors. And once you fulfill all those things and you have a file ready, now let me also, I didn't go into details, but some journals want that your file should be totally anonymous, including you actually remove even the place where you've done the work or something like that. So some journals insist on that. Some journals might want you to submit just like that, and some journals will have two files, like some journals like Singapore Medical Journal and some others, they expect you to have one anonymous file and one file with those details being there. So how do you anonymize? You might say that okay, it was done in a XYZ institute in a particular place in India or whatever, or just so nobody knows where it was done. So you do that and then you submit. And then once you submit and you submit it through the site, nowadays most of them have automated sites. So you need to submit the entire thing, including your abstract, your covering letter, your figures or tables, everything, because that has to be sent to the reviewers. Only abstract will not give an idea.
Thank you, sir. Similarly, the next question we've received is, what is indexing and how do we know the prestige of the journal?
Yes, so I'm also seeing the chat now. I think Satyam Kumar Jha, right? So indexing basically, see, all these journals are indexed in different databases. Now, if for your level, I would say that you look at some of them only. So maybe PubMed is one of the places usually we say, which is good enough. And if a journal has to be indexed in that particular database, now especially databases like PubMed and Scopus, they will not include any and every journal. They look at the quality of the papers, they look at the quality of the reviews, they also look at the quality of the journal in terms of how regular they are, how meticulous they are, how many articles they are publishing. Now they will not accept a journal which publishes only say two original article and maybe one review and one say short article and one probably editorial. So they have minimum numbers, so before they can go in for indexing. Then they also will look at how regular. It cannot be that one issue has come and another issue comes months later or years later, and then three issues come and then again there is a break. So they have certain parameters to be looked at, and then they index it. So if it is indexed in something like PubMed or Scopus or Web of Science, so that means they meet that quality criteria, and that's how you know. Now coming to the prestige, there are different parameters. There's something known as impact factor. Again, it's too hi-fi, but then I would just simply explain it. Impact factor takes into account the number of articles published in a journal, okay, and the number of citations it receives. So to give you a simple example, now, for example, a journal XYZ in the last 2 years had, I would again not go into details of which kind of articles, but say it had say 100 articles which are eligible to be looked at. So 100 articles, and if this had in the next, like, so if I look at say this year, and so I will look at the previous 2 years of that articles in that journal. So how many citations that journal, any article received in the last some time. So once that was done, I would calculate based on the number of citations divided by the number of articles, and that will give me the impact factor. That means that journal has that many impact. So that's how you go about. Okay,
Uh,
then there are other parameters also, but these are the simple things to look at.
Similarly, the next question is from Ms. Anusha Regmi, who wants to know how to start working for review article and how to start on publishing it.
Okay, so review article basically is see something which usually takes on one particular topic or very specific and focused. So what you do is you actually look up a topic and you do a very in-depth review. That means you look at multiple things in that subject area and you read up all the resources, and you create evidence based. So once you've done that, you will actually synthesize and write in your own words, of course taking from different places and referring to those and then putting up that in your reference. But then you will come up with the synthesis of all that you have read, and then you will put up, so it becomes very easy. For example, again, let me give you an idea. So if you say that a particular type of contact lens is better than another type, okay, so you might want to do that. Now how do you do that? You need to look at a lot of studies which have been published. So you look at all that, and once you do that, you write the whole thing. Then you can also say that there are different ways, different types of lenses available, these are the different lenses. And then what happened is, like, these are the ones which the studies were done, and this is the best right now. Why do we say that? Because it leads to less user discomfort, it leads to less side effects, less number of infections, it has a longer life. I'm again giving hypothetical example, and you cite saying wherever, and then you put up the whole thing, and this will become a particular paper. So if I read that and I read from different sources, if you've compiled, so I don't have to go and refer each of the things. I have actually compiled the whole thing, and then a person reading that gets a whole gist of thing by just reading of one article, and that's could be one of the reviews. So you go about doing a lot of literature search, synthesizing the entire thing, and then you compile the whole thing, and then you send it for publication, of course again following the guidelines of the authors.
Thank you, sir. Similarly, the next question is from Ms. Uma Maheshwari again, who wants to know, can a private batch students publish papers in journal?
I'm not very clear on the question, but I believe that this means that the students private batch means, hopefully, I guess that they are from, not from an institute, is it that? So if so, yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's nothing like you have to be always affiliated. Anybody can publish, provided you give something which is publishable, which is genuine, and which fulfills the expectations of the reader and the journal.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, sir. We are now done with the questions now, and this was
There is
indeed.
one more, I think. I can see what is the difference between first author and corresponding author,
Oh,
right?
of course, sir.
Yeah. So basically, see, again, depends. Now in our part of the world, first author is given the most importance usually, but that's not always the case. And if you look at Western world, what they do is actually the last author usually is the most senior most, or the one who's responsible and things like that. Many a times he will be the guide, or he will be the supervisor and things like that. And the first author usually will be the most junior. Correspondence author or corresponding author is basically the person who takes the responsibility of corresponding and making sure that he is the liaison person. So he will do it with the journal office, with any kind of reviews coming in, and also if any letter to the editor or people write, so he will get the correspondence and he will liaison again with all the authors, and then he will discuss and then reply. So all that is part of corresponding author. So corresponding author could be anybody. It could be the first, second, third, middle, or last one, anybody. But that person should be responsible to do all this, and also should always be on the, like, he should be very prompt. He can't be that, today the response, I mean, the mail has come, and then you sleep over it, and then suddenly you, like, one day find it, like, you realize. So it has to be very prompt, and then somebody who can actually liaison with all the people.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we are done with the questions now. And on behalf of ForOptom team and our audience, I would like to thank you, sir, for giving us your valuable time and the knowledge and the lovely experience. We appreciate it a lot, and I'm sure we all have learned something of value today. On that note, I would also like to thank our audience for being so supportive, interactive, and attentive. This brings us to the end of the session. We will be back with more programs and sessions. Meanwhile, please like the video, subscribe to our channel. You can also visit us at www.foroptom.com. Also follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. This is your host, Manashvi, signing off. Stay safe, stay home, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Manashvi.
Sir, could you just stay back for some time?
Okay.